The richest people you know never show it, and the ones who do show it are already being hunted. There is a manipulation playbook that almost nobody talks about because the people it targets are too embarrassed to admit they fell for it, and the people running it are too smart to explain it. It operates in boardrooms, investment meetings, luxury hotel lobbies, and private dinners. It costs its victims millions. And it begins not with a lie, not with a forged document, not with a Ponzi scheme. It begins the moment you decide to look expensive. Today we are going inside the psychology of visible wealth as a vulnerability. We are going to examine how the signals you send when you buy a Rolex, lease a penthouse, or pull up in a car that costs more than most people earn in 3 years are not just signals of status. They are coordinates. They are an invitation. And the most dangerous people in any room know exactly how to read them. What you will understand by the end of this is why the genuinely powerful have always hidden their resources. Why old money despises new money, not just out of snobbery, but out of strategic self-preservation. Why Robert Greene, for all his brilliance, leaves a critical, psychological vulnerability unaddressed. And what the dark triad playbook looks like when it specifically targets the visibly affluent. And more importantly, how to use that knowledge to make yourself structurally immune to it. This is not about minimalism as a lifestyle. This is about power as a survival strategy. The status signal as a target acquisition system. Daniel Kahneman spent decades documenting how human beings make fast, automatic, largely unconscious judgments. System 1 thinking, he called it. The reflex brain. And one of the things System 1 does with extraordinary efficiency is scan for resource cues. It does this because, for most of human evolutionary history, attaching yourself to someone with visible resources was a survival advantage. That wiring is still inside every person you meet. But here's the problem. The same cognitive shortcut that makes people instinctively trust, defer to, and want proximity to visibly wealthy individuals also makes those individuals a systemically predictable target for anyone who understands the wiring. Robert Cialdini identified social proof and authority as two of the most powerful levers of influence. Visible wealth activates both simultaneously. The expensive watch says authority. The tailored suit says authority. The car, the address, the offhand mention of the last trip to Geneva, all of it says authority. People treat you differently. They open doors. They pick up the check, not because they are generous, but because proximity to perceived wealth feels like opportunity. And every skilled predator in the business world knows this, and they have known it for centuries. Con artists do not target the poor. They target the aspirational, the comfortable, and the visibly affluent. Why? Because the visibly affluent have already pre-screened themselves. They have announced that they have something worth taking. They have also announced something psychologically more important. They care about status. And anyone who cares about status has a lever inside them that can be pulled. Think about the mechanics. When you display wealth, you attract a certain category of people whose entire professional skill set revolves around identifying, approaching, and extracting value from high net worth targets. These are not always criminals. Often they are charismatic investors pitching deals that exist only on paper. Real estate developers with spectacular renders and hollow balance sheets. Consultants who charge fortunes for frameworks that dissolve on contact with reality. The very fact that you look like money tells them you have money to deploy, and that you are psychologically susceptible to opportunities that maintain or elevate your status. The dark triad operator and how they read the room. Let us be specific about who we are talking about. The dark triad, the clustering of narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, produces a particular kind of operator. Research by Paul Hewson Williams, and later work by Kevin Dutton, consistently shows that high Machiavellian individuals in particular are skilled at strategic self-presentation, at reading social hierarchies quickly, and at identifying which levers to pull on which targets. A high Machiavellian individual walks into a room and they are not networking, they are mapping. They are looking for resource asymmetries, status anxiety, and ego investment. And the person wearing a $100,000 watch in a room where most people are wearing fashion watches just handed them a complete psychological profile without saying a single word. Here is what that profile says to a skilled operator. 1. This person has significant financial resources. 2. This person derives identity from status markers, which means they are susceptible to flattery that references those markers. 3. This person likely fears being perceived as ordinary, which creates a manipulation vector around exclusivity, rare opportunity, and elite access. 4. This person is probably accustomed to deference, which means they may have an underdeveloped suspicion reflex in social situations because most people they encounter are trying to impress them, not exploit them. That fourth point is where the real danger lives. Genuine power and long experience with being catered to can dull your threat detection. You stop expecting attacks because you have spent years in rooms where people were selling to you, pitching to you, trying to please you. And then the Machiavellian operator enters, mirroring your status signals, speaking your language, referencing the same exclusive contexts, and your system one brain files them immediately under peer, not threat. Richard Thaler's work on mental accounting illuminates the rest. When we categorize someone as a peer or a superior, we apply different mental accounting rules to interactions with them. We are less price sensitive. We are more willing to commit resources. We lower the cognitive friction that normally protects us. The operator has not tricked your logic. They have bypassed it entirely by hacking your social categorization system. Bernie Madoff did not target random investors. He targeted the socially connected, the status conscious, the members of exclusive clubs and communities where being part of the group already implied a shared identity. He made his fund feel like membership in an elite, and the more elite someone already felt, the more they wanted to be included. The visible trappings of wealth made his targets reachable, identifiable, and finally exploitable. The psychology of old money concealment there is a reason that genuinely dynastic wealth is almost impossible to identify on the street. The Waltons do not dress like billionaires at the grocery store. Warren Buffett lives in the same house in Omaha he bought in 1958 for $31,000. The Rothschild family, for 300 years, has been almost pathologically private about the true extent of their holdings. This is not modesty. It is doctrine. Old money concealment is a learned survival behavior. It emerged from centuries of watching visibly wealthy families get targeted by political enemies, revolutionary movements, predatory creditors, social climbers, and opportunistic marriages. The Medicis learned it. The Dutch merchant elite of the 17th century codified it. The English aristocracy, stripped of formal power after the Industrial Revolution, preserved its wealth partly through radical discretion about its actual extent. Paul Piff's research at Berkeley showed that individuals who display wealth signal not only resources but a particular psychology, lower empathy, stronger in-group preference, and crucially, greater belief in their own invulnerability. That last one is the trap. The conspicuous display of wealth is often an unconscious broadcast of the belief that you are too powerful to be touched, and that belief is precisely what makes you touchable. They cannot build a tailored manipulation strategy. They cannot identify your specific ego vulnerabilities through the signals you are emitting. You force them to engage with you on cognitive terms rather than status terms, and on cognitive terms the advantage belongs to whoever is smarter and better prepared, not whoever looks more expensive. This is what Robert Greene gets right about power and wrong about wealth display. Greene celebrates the theatrical dimension of power, the strategic use of image, the construction of reputation as a weapon, and in a pre-digital, physically bounded social world, that framework has merit. But it fundamentally misunderstands the cost structure of theatrical wealth in a world populated by increasingly sophisticated financial predators who have read the same books you have. Influence, vulnerability, and the leverage of perceived need here is where it gets psychologically subtle. One of the reasons people display wealth is to signal that they do not need anything from you. They are self-sufficient, powerful. The display of resources is meant to project independence, and here's the paradox: it does exactly the opposite. When you display wealth, you create perceived need in everyone around you, and you also reveal your own needs. You need to maintain the image. You need deals that match your status level. You need opportunities that justify the identity you have built around your financial position. These needs are invisible to you because they feel like preferences, but to a skilled operator, they are load-bearing psychological structures. Cialdini's principle of scarcity and exclusivity maps directly onto this. Tell someone who has invested their identity in being elite that there is an exclusive opportunity available only to a small number of qualified investors, and you have activated the exact ego machinery their wealth display revealed. You did not create their desire. Their own status performance created it. You are simply reading the map they drew for you. This is why so many high net worth individuals get targeted by investment scams that no one with a tenth of their financial resources would have touched. Because the scam was not designed to appeal to financial logic. It was designed to appeal to status logic. It offered membership in a category, and the target's visible wealth had already told the operator exactly which category to offer. The flip side of this is equally important for anyone in a position of actual power. Displaying financial constraints, or simply displaying nothing at all, makes you a harder target and a more powerful negotiator. When the other party does not know what you have, they cannot calibrate their ask. They cannot engineer your fear of missing out. They cannot tailor their offer to the specific identity you have broadcast. Ambiguity in resource display is a negotiating weapon that most people voluntarily discard every morning when they get dressed. The business history record is full of operators who understood this viscerally. John D. Rockefeller lived modestly for decades while assembling the largest private fortune in American history. On Bolivinex tires, Truk ID, his frugality was not personal virtue. It was strategic opacity. Sam Walton, worth billions, drove an old pickup truck and bought his clothes off the rack. He was not performing humility. He was refusing to give competitors, partners, suppliers, or anyone else a psychological handhold. The counterintuitive protection strategy. So what does structural immunity actually look like? It has 3 components, and none of them are about dressing badly or pretending to be poor. The first is what we might call signal discipline. This means consciously auditing what your external presentation communicates and to whom. Not eliminating all signals of competence or success, but eliminating the redundant ones, the signals that exist purely to impress rather than to function. The sculptors. There's a meaningful difference between wearing a good watch, because you appreciate watchmaking, and wearing a specific brand at a specific price point, because you want other people to know what it costs. One is preference, one is broadcasting, and only one of them makes you a target. The second component is deliberate ambiguity about resource scope. This is not deception, it is silence, which is a very different thing. In any negotiation, investment conversation, or new professional relationship, the party that reveals the extent of their resources first has almost always weakened their position. The psychological default for most successful people is to signal resources as a way of establishing credibility. Train yourself to establish credibility through demonstrated knowledge and insight instead. Let the other party wonder what you actually have. That uncertainty works for you. The third component is status anxiety, monitoring in yourself. Because the deepest reason people over-signal wealth is not external strategy, it is internal discomfort. The person who genuinely has no anxiety about their position in the hierarchy does not need to broadcast it. The display is almost always, at some level, a defensive move, and defenses are visible to anyone paying attention. When you catch yourself wanting to mention the property, the car, the deal, the connection, ask honestly whether the impulse is strategic or anxious. Because if it is anxious, you are not projecting power, you are projecting a wound. And wounds attract exactly the kind of attention you should be working to avoid. Combined, these 3 create what the behavioral economists call an asymmetric information advantage. You know more about your actual position than any counterparty. You have given them nothing to build a manipulation strategy around. You force every interaction onto the terrain of merit and intelligence, rather than the terrain of status performance, where you are vulnerable in ways that are structurally built into the game. The deeper play, what genuine power actually looks like, there is a paradox at the center of all of this that is worth sitting with. The people who have genuinely changed industries, built lasting institutions, and accumulated multi-generational wealth have almost never done it through status performance. They did it through information advantages, through relationships built on trust rather than impression, and through a consistent refusal to let their ego lead their strategy. The dark triad literature consistently shows that the most dangerous operators in any environment are not the ones who look the most powerful. They are the ones whose actual capability is hardest to read. Ambiguity is threatening in a way that visible wealth simply is not. A person whose resources you cannot estimate, whose network you cannot map, and whose intentions you cannot decode, commands a qualitatively different kind of respect than someone who communicates everything through their watch and their car and their conversation about where they just flew back from. It denies your opponents the information they need to play against you. It keeps the room slightly off balance in your presence because they cannot quite place you, cannot quite predict you, cannot quite target you. And in the world full of increasingly sophisticated psychological operators who have studied influence, status, and manipulation as a professional discipline, that invisibility is not just elegant. It is the only thing that genuinely protects you. The visible rich are already being hunted. If this changes how you think about power, subscribe.